Welcome to Greenshoe Radio. I'm your host, Mark Bunting. Our guest today is Judson Culter, CEO of Rover Metals. It trades under the ticker symbol ROVR on the TSX Venture exchange, also trades on the OTCQB under the ticker ROVMF, and it trades in Frankfurt under the ticker 4XO. Good to see you, Judson. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
So you've got some news I know you're excited about. We'll get to that in just a while. But for those who may not know that much about Rover Metals, let's give a little backdrop here. I know the company has an ad running on BNN Bloomberg right now. And in that ad, it describes its properties in Northwest Territories as quote unquote amazing. And I know that you've talked about the potential for an elephant-sized discovery and big potential returns for investors here. So what are some of the factors about your properties, especially Cabin Gold, that have your team fired up here?
For sure. So Cabin Gold has got two other projects attached to it that are just 10 kilometers apart. So we actually have three projects all sort of on the gold trend. And what's exciting about Cabin Gold, Sleeman Gold, and Camp Gold, all three of those projects, is that in about 120 square kilometer radius, you've got other junior miners that are 5 to 10 years ahead of us that are sitting on a collective resource of about 7.2 million ounces. So that there on itself is elephant, like 7.2 million ounces of gold. That's the Northwest Territories. You know, our project, when we bought it with a historical resource of about 85,000 ounces. You know, that was 3 years ago. We've since put $3 million in exploration into it. So, you know, we're looking ahead into 2022, obviously adding ounces with every drill hole that's mineralized. So, you know, we can get into that, you know, later in the interview, but 2022 is just poised to be a really good year for us.
For sure. Now, a couple of these neighbors that you're referring to, you've got Fortune nearby, you've got Nighthawk Gold. I've talked to the CEO of that company before. And as you said, they're 5 to 10 years ahead of Rover in their development process. So aside from the fact that they have resources and you have implied resources as well, how does that work in Rover's favor?
Well, I think for us, it's great to have companies that are later stage than us because, you know, for them, why wouldn't they want to just add ounces by, you know, buying an undervalued company? And I'm not to say that's their intent or even our exit strategy, because it's not. You know, I guess another way to look at the advantage for us is they're bringing the infrastructure to the area ahead of Rover Metals. So we've already seen that with the all-season road, which goes past Fortune and goes up to Nighthawk. You know, we're an hour and a half drive from our property to the city of Yellowknife, which is, you know, the major hub, all the labor, the skilled labor and that you would need. So, and I guess, a third talking point on why that's an advantage would be, you know, we don't necessarily have to build a mine at Rover. We just have to get 500,000 to 1 million ounces, because there's nothing stopping us from trucking our ore to a nearby mine. So that's why it's great to have Fortune, Nighthawk, and, you know, if their metallurgy, especially looking towards Nighthawk, is similar to our own, you know, if there's somebody else who's got a mill close by, that's good for us. And we shouldn't discount as well, you know, Gold Terra right in Yellowknife, you know, as well as Gold Mining Inc. You know, they've got significant gold deposits as well. And we have an ice road, a winter ice road that's permitted for transport. So that's 140 kilometers from our project right to the city of Yellowknife.
That makes a lot of sense, and it sounds like you've got a lot of options there. Judson, let's get to the juicy stuff here. Phase 2 drilling is complete for Cabin Gold, and Rover Metals has just announced it's achieved expansion of the gold grades at the Beaver Zone, which saw some historical drilling back in the 1980s. So I know you're pumped about this. Give us the details.
Absolutely. I think when we poured over all the historical data after making the 2020 discovery at the Arrow Zone, our best hope for this summer's program was to delineate 2 of those historical target areas. There was 5 to 7, you know, sort of potential targets, we focused on the Beaver Zone and the Andrew Zone. And, what's great news, which we didn't see necessarily in today's press release, is we actually think the Andrew Zone is going to be an equally impressive, new zone that gets fully delineated. But, I think where we're going to be heading in February when we start drilling in Q1 is just focusing in on that Bonanza Arrow Zone plus Beaver. They're only 400 meters apart. Both of them extend out over the Cabin Lake itself, which is why they were overlooked historically as well at depth, because the lake has to be frozen, you have to build ice, you have to get build the drill pads out on the ice. So it makes sense for us, with this delineation that at Beaver, which is there's still really good medium to high grade there. We've got 6.5 meters of 5 grams per ton. It's not the Bonanza stuff that we found in 2020, but anything above 0.5 gram per ton is economic. And so this is just these two. We actually think that the Beaver may extend 400 meters southeast in the Arrow. And the Arrow is already 120 meters at surface. And, these iron formations are underground mines, right? So that's just the significance of this. I mean, we've just opened up, two really good targets to drill them at depth, and that will be a core part of a resource on the project for 2022. In terms of what we see coming in Andrew, the Andrew Zone, which is in the northeast part of the property, the strike length that we've initially looked at appears to be 800 meters in surface length. So that's like, I guess you could say, 4 times what we have at Arrow and Beaver. So it's quite significantly longer. And when we looked at the samples, the gold ran right to the end of the core. So we've actually had to cut more core, right the cutoff, like the very end of the hole that we sampled was a 1 gram per ton. So we've actually had to cut the shoulders off the core and send it in, because we actually think the intervals are longer, the mineralized intervals are longer. So that's a great problem to have. They're already looking decent. So yeah, I mean, this project, it warrants, I would say, 4,000 to 5,000 meters easily in H1 of next year, full steam ahead, if you will.
Right. So 2022 looks to be an eventful year for Rover Metals. And you've said it's forecast to be the company's biggest growth year yet. You've been updating us on the winter drilling program, a lot of milestones you want to hit in 2022. Can you flesh it out a little bit more?
For sure. Yeah, I think the Bonanza area that we've got about 30,000, well, actually I should say higher now, 40,000 ounces averaging 8 grams per ton. That's a Bonanza sort of historic resource that we've expanded on. And we're going to drill that at depth below 75 meters out over the lake. It's never been drilled out over the lake before. We're also going to drill the Beaver Zone at depth. And, the guys are on site this week, actually dragging the IP lines out over the lake to follow the Arrow Zone dip direction. And, so the confidence level, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. The confidence level of where we're and how we're drilling at depth in February is extremely high. I mean, we've got $3 million worth of exploration data now that we're using. And the good news is we've tested the IP. It doesn't work on every project. It works on ours. It tells us we're looking for, high sulfide areas, a high sort of chargeability. We get that. And so that IP data will be done and ready before Christmas. That will then gives us the ability to sort of 3-dimensionalize the deposit and plan the drill pads for February. And of course, this is all forward looking, and we do need to raise some more money in February, but not much. I mean, Treasury's at 700,000 today. So, we're sort of halfway there, if you will, for what we need to drill the Arrow Zone at depth in February.
Okay, so that answers my question, which was coming in a while about being cashed up. So you probably need to raise maybe a little less than $1 million.
That's right. Yeah, but right. I think there's been a lot of talk about the easing of gold and so on and so forth. Sprott just sent an article out yesterday, and I think the good news for gold in 2022 is any banks under the Basel III Accord, if that's a thing, that had to cover physical positions. Gold is supposed to be breaking out here finally in 2022. So the point is that it's still favorable today at $1,800 an ounce to raise under $1 million for exploration. So I don't think we have a lot of headwinds for that capital raise in February. And to be fair, listen, the ice it stays cold enough on the ice until early April. So we actually have quite a long runway. We're not raising any money at these current share prices, right? We've got more news coming with the Andrew Zone. And so I would think we at a minimum want to be running to raise money at above 10 cents looking ahead to Q1, right?
Okay. I know something else investors can look forward to, and you're looking forward to, is a 43-101 sometime in the first half of 22. Now, you've used a preliminary rough number of 165,000 ounces and extrapolated that to where the stock could and should be trading above 40 cents. So do you have a rough estimate of the potential size of Rover's resource and what it could mean for the stock?
Yeah, so just one thing to clarify, I think in terms of our forward-looking statements on that resource, that would be the end of H1. So it'd be by, sort of June 30th.
Okay.
We've got, the first half, the exploration work we do in Q1 here is pretty key to that. But yeah, I think the value of bringing a resource to market is about 250,000 ounces plus, right? And I think we're undervalued today when you look at that we've done that sort of metric on the number of ounces we have ballpark versus our stock price. And I think a bit of a rule of thumb on the market is unless you've got 250,000 ounces or maybe 200, the analysts aren't really giving you fair value per ounce. And so obviously we want to get fair value per ounce. I think if you use the ballpark of $125 US an ounce times the number of ounces that we have, like I say, 125 is a ballpark in ground, estimate. The valuation should be much higher. So that's fine. We're just going to keep our head down. Our dilution isn't so bad. We have 117 million shares outstanding. We've probably got to do, one more retail financing to get to the institutional level. And as long as we're sub 200 million shares, I believe when we bring a 250,000 ounce resource to market and finally get that, that analyst coverage and that fair valuation per ounce, I think that's the ROI. That's what we're promising investors. It's not the quick day trade to hold, till we get our first drill result out in April. I think you really want to see us, A, get a strategic investor, B, bring a resource, C, get institutional investment. That's what I'm in it for. That's why I keep buying. And it's a 4 to 5 year investment in a mining junior. It's not, like a 2-week trade. You know what I mean?
Right. Let's keep going with those potential catalysts you touched on there. You mentioned a possible strategic investment from an established gold company or an institutional investment and/or more analyst coverage. So are there any, I know you probably can't say too much, but are there any updates on those fronts or what your expectations are?
Well, we're building big data. That's the good news is like we've done a ton of geophysics work. We've now done drilling. We've flown, when I talked about at the top of the interview, the fact that we've got 2 other gold projects along trend that are just 10 kilometers apart. We flew an airborne and we discovered a huge new iron formation just off of Sleeman Gold. We did some ground sampling. So we're also painting a regional package here. We're very close to hydro in the area. So it's just we're building big data so that when the time is right, we can take it. There's been a few companies that have sniffed around that are producers based on our 2020 results, and they've said that this is the kind of data they'd like to see as well. So that's just where we're headed. 2022, if it's a good gold market, there's no reason why it can't be our best year yet, right?
Judson, on another front, and this speaks to ESG, especially the social part, Rover Metals has a deal with the First Nations group for land access, and I understand the company employs many First Nations people. So how significant is that for the company, given the current environment and the interest among investors in ESG?
Yeah, well, it ties directly into your last question, right, in terms of the institutional investment. So opening the door for institutional, investment into a mining company going forward, with really a world that wants to be much greener, but at the same time, gold is used in all kinds of electronics and EV vehicles as well. But point being is, as it becomes harder to get institutional money for places like Congolese, cobalt, as it should, by the way, companies like Rover are, doing great things up in northern communities where mining is the only employer in the north, unless you work, either in government or in the military. It costs you $1,000 a month to heat your home and have electricity for your kids' video games in Yellowknife. So mining jobs are needed up north. I'm proud to say that this week we surpassed 4,000 labor hours for the local Clecho community, which is pretty awesome, seeing as we're a junior miner. And they are on site today and still working. So, I mean, we've got, should the industry in Canada from an institutional perspective go that way, certainly we are on track for ESG type of investment. I think as the company gets much, much bigger, having these early stage relationships is a huge amount of goodwill for anybody that would come in and, want this project and take it over.
That's a great story. Let's wrap it up here, Judson. Lastly, as you know, precious metals investors have a lot of options in the sector. So make the investment case, and you have to a large degree, touching a lot of points, but make the investment case that Rover Metals is a company that investors really need to look at.
Yeah, this has been a good gold market. I think it's getting better. We've just been adding ounces. I mean, we are doing a lot of work behind the scenes that people don't see. There's a new project that's going to be coming, most likely in Nevada. We are going to, be able to sort of complement the need for constant quarterly, drilling and adding more ounces in the ground, right? So that's just, that's what we're doing. It's full steam ahead. I think in terms of, when is the big super cycle and acquisition cycle coming in mining that's over 10 years, people have been waiting for it? Well, we don't know. I think it's encouraging for us that Newmont has been active in Yellowknife, selling the con claims on option to Gold Terra. I know that some of the shareholders in Nighthawk include Kinross. So, listen, it's, I think we have to do our job to, show that there's high grade gold, in our, where we're working. And, so yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball for the M&A cycle in 2022, but I will say that if companies like Pretium have just been bought in the Golden Triangle, building a mine at 8,000 vertical feet in the Golden Triangle versus building one, on completely flat, sort of more tundra-like ground in the territories, from a CapEx perspective, much more, much easier to do.
Thanks for your time, Judson. Good luck with everything, and we'll be watching.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for the interview.
Okay, you've been listening to Greenshoe Radio. Our guest today has been Judson Culter, CEO of Rover Metals, which trades under the ticker symbol ROVR on the TSX Venture Exchange, trades on the OTCQB under the ticker ROVMF, and it trades in Frankfurt as well under the ticker 4XO. I'm Mark Bunting. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.